Grandiose would be like more characteristic of people who are like, I'm the best, everything's great, it's so good. And then vulnerable narcissism might be like, oh, I'm uniquely terrible and my life is awful and nothing can be good.
Why are you pivoting so much away from leftism, and what do you see as your role in correcting trans communities? You already kind of answered the first one, right? Like, you don't really agree with all of the excessive harm reduction, like, notices, if I understand it correctly. Like, there are a lot of negatives, but what would you mainly answer to the second part of this? And the first part, if I misunderstood your take.
What is it? She sees her role in correcting trans communities. I don't see my role as correcting trans communities. I'm just one person on the internet who expresses their opinions sometimes and happens to be trans. And like I said at the start of the conversation, people pay like attention to my opinion for some reason. And so it seems like they care a lot about it. I'm not totally sure why, but they do. And I just say what I think is true and people react accordingly.
Based, not gonna lie. What are the main things wrong with contemporary trans culture which you would like to change?
Oh God, here's what I'll say. Something I've been thinking about, which maybe I wish I had talked about earlier in this interview, because I'm sure people will only watch the first half. But one thing that I've noticed is that there is like a kind of narcissism, which is very pervasive within the trans community. And I see it in two ways. I'll preface this by saying, like, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not trained in psychology. And when I say narcissism, I'm not diagnosing people. I'm really talking about like personality traits that are probably like associated with narcissism. But I don't mean to say that like people are literally narcissists or have NPD. Yeah, and so like I think that broadly, and people, of course, another caveat, people can correct me if I'm wrong. I think that there's like two big types of narcissism, which is like vulnerable and grandiose narcissism. And grandiose would be like more characteristic of people who are like, I'm the best, everything's great, it's so good. And then vulnerable narcissism might be like, oh, I'm uniquely terrible and my life is awful and nothing can be good. And I see both of these sentiments within the trans community to a very large extent. And I think that like you can kind of characterize them by like Reddit circle jerks and like 4chan doomerism. And
That's
both
hilarious.
of these perspectives are just awful.
That is hilarious, actually, because I can see what you mean. Like, thinking about the Reddit trans communities versus like TTTT.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But neither is good. Neither is like actually realistic or reasonable to be. So I would say to people, like, you are not uniquely in like this awful position, and you don't have to like destroy yourself by constantly focusing on the worst aspects of your life, because pretty much everyone for all of human history has been in a worse position than you. Like, they've starved and dealt with horrific diseases and deprivation. And yet these people, your ancestors, managed to live, to find partners, to love, and to find happiness in life with so much worse of circumstances than you. And I think there's a real temptation to view yourself as uniquely victimized, because in a way that feels good. It feels nice to feel like you are justified in your sadness. And there's a real kind of self-harm that people engage in when they view themselves as uniquely suffering. And I think you have to get away from that perspective. You have to get away from that kind of vulnerable narcissism.
Yeah.
On the other side, oh yeah, go ahead.
No, please continue. I can ask at the end. It's gonna be the same question.
I'll be quick then. On the other side, I think you have to acknowledge that like things are not perfect. Like, and you are not like, you know, the hottest woman on the block because you've been on estrogen for 3 months. Like, let's be realistic. Estrogen is not going to give you an identical weight distribution to a cis woman, at least not within 5 years, probably not within 10 years. And so you should just understand that, and understand also that that's like okay. Like, it's fine to not have estrogen be like this magical panacea that does everything and makes you gorgeous or whatever. Like, we can recognize that and still be like, yeah, it's fine to take estrogen and, you know, do what you want with your body, but let's be kind of realistic about what that is like, and not, you know, people get really defensive when you bring these things up, when you're like, hey, listen, it's not all sunshine and roses. I think because people kind of prefer to live in a delusion where everything is perfect and they don't want that ever challenged. So this is not true of every trans people. every trans person. Most trans people are fairly reasonable, but I do see both of these sentiments within the trans community, and both are probably not so helpful.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I'm curious if when you say like you see them in the trans community, are you referring to like mostly online trans communities, or do you see this a lot in your like, oh, well, I don't know if you interact with a lot of trans people IRL. I would assume yes, but also like I guess I shouldn't assume that. So yes, the question is like, when you refer to trans communities, are you primarily referring to online trans communities, or are you also referring to like the IRL communities around you?